It's been a while since I've updated you guys on what is happening over at Polkadot. It's one of my main holds, it's a hold that I've had for a while, and it's something that I really like to have. I will warn you though, I'm not very technically minded. I may pronounce things a little bit wrong, so bear with me on that one. However, this video is more about what is happening, pointing you in the right direction to do your own research and your own due diligence so you can figure out what is happening. I still think that this is undervalued in my opinion. Technology-wise, there's a lot of things coming. The model of Polkadot is totally changing, which is what I aim to explain, hopefully, in this video. So let me know down in the comments, are you a Polkadot holder or simply like the video? I want to see how many people are still here. So let's get into it. Polkadot, the blockchain ecosystem of, well, basically for boundarless innovation. I know, I've already butchered that bit. But let's talk about what has came out. And already in the last 24 hours, there's been a bit of a development. The Kusama Polkadot bridge is now live. Pioneering example of trustless interoperability. Finally, the two ecosystems which have been a part of each other's lives for a couple of years have finally got a bridge. I know, finally here. It has been a bit of a pain in the ass with certain projects, certainly like I've been using Bifrost, for example, and you know, if you're on the wrong chain, there's nothing to kind of do it other than just sending it to a centralized exchange to swap it. But now that is finally a situation we don't have to do anymore. So essentially the bridge allows everything to kind of fluidly, as an interoperable space, go from one network to the other. Obviously, as you know this, hopefully you do, that the Kusama is essentially the test chain that, you know, all the things are tested on, and we're going to come back to that in a bit. But, you know, the main element here is the ability to, you know, connect with each other, which is good, certainly when you think of the parachain technology. However, that is getting put slowly in the bin when we are going to talk about that bit in a second, right? So as you can see here, the core functionality, the message handling, obviously, hosting, bridging, pallets, governance, and ownership. So the main thing, I'm hoping you all know how bridges work. They're in multiple ecosystems. So yes, it is live. There is a bug bounty available, so it may be a bit glitchy at first, but be wary of that. However, you can see here as well, there's a lot of things here. So the transport layer, I know I'm not going to go through it all because you'll fall asleep, but you can see here ultimately how it's all going to work. But yeah, as I say, do a bit of research. So let's go back in time a little bit with Polkadot 2.0, which was announced, you know, last year essentially. And, you know, flicking through it, obviously we're going to talk about core times, we're going to talk about bits and bobs. And this is kind of what the original thing was, right? So you can see here, core time, you know, slot leasing mechanism didn't work. Parachain's not really working, in my opinion. Fixed duration, 6 to 24 months, obviously granted slot leasing, all that kind of stuff. Looking at the right-hand column, it changes massively. It's flexible, it's fluid. And I've talked about this before in previous videos, and this is kind of where we're at. As you can imagine, this allows anyone to utilize a system. You can go on the substrate model, build your blockchain off their stack, and then apply for the core time by purchasing whatever you want instead of having to do a massive fundraise. Keep that idea in your head, what could be happening in the future. So you can see how much efficient it is. Other things as well, obviously the challenges here, you know, this shift changes many early challenges. It's more adaptive and it's more efficient, right? Versus obviously other projects. Look what Solana's doing. Look at all the other ecosystems, which is much easier. As I say, that barrier to entry to Polkadot has been too hard. It's too developer focused, and we all know that. And this is why some of these changes are coming about, and we're going to go into it, why it kind of all really does make sense, and it's going to get a lot of people very, very excited in my opinion. So let's go into core time in a bit more detail. So in normal terms, it's like renting a house, right? You will purchase said house for however long, and you are given the roof and you're given the utilities to use it and live and eat and poo in it, right? Whatever. Core time is very, very similar, right? You will pick how long you want it for. You can bulk buy, and how many kind of core time elements you have, it would dictate how fast your blockchain essentially will run in other bits and pieces, right? So when we talk about the agile element around it, this is kind of the parachain board around the, you know, the agile core time. We'll talk about the element in a second about Kusama, but this is kind of what's happening in terms of what's already been completed, what's in progress, and what's to eventually, hopefully, fingers crossed, come, right? When we go back to that previous bit, obviously core times, as you can see here, you know, it's all, I know it's all waffly bollocks to a lot of people, but it's all on demand. And this element here is interesting on demand, right? So for example, if you're a project and you want to increase your speed because you're getting a bit backlogged, you can buy more, increases the space, increases the capability. When we talk about Kusama, it's already live on Kusama. They're already testing it, right? So you can see here, reveal that 3 cores were sold for 70 Kusama, approximately $2,000. And yeah, that's the big element to it. It's already working, but the biggest thing here, right? And you can see the pictures here. This is on, obviously, X from Alice and Bob. Now, problem. What do you think? Well, I quite like this. Why? Because the revenue is going to get burned. Now, when you think about it this way, Polkadot's biggest drawdown to a lot of people, what I've found anywhere through my Twitter and through my YouTube comments, is the inflation's too high and there's no fixed supply, which is fair, right? This element allows it to kind of burn even more. Now, the treasury does get burned, as you can imagine. Little parts of that does get burned, not much though. And then obviously adding this to it is huge. So when you're thinking about, well, how many core times are going to get obviously burned over the course of a month or however many periods they're going to do it, that is a revenue protocol and it could be quite good. There has been a lot of proposals. Now, these are very much iffy and they're just proposals. There's been a proposal to decrease inflation. There's been proposals for a fixed maximum supply. It's decentralized. Certain things can happen within this ecosystem. And this is just one element to it. Revenue burned for core time is probably going to be one of the best options in my opinion. Now, another thing that often gets talked about is scalability of a blockchain. We know what happens with Ethereum. We know sometimes Solana knocks off because it gets a bit too hot. And when we talk about the asynchronized backing, this is also coming out not too far away realistically, right? This basically, yeah, you can see here, it changes the entire ecosystem of Polkadot in terms of its speed. Now, first one, para blocks goes from 12 to 6 seconds. 2 times more throughput, 2 times less latency. So it already is efficient. More data per para block as well is huge. And when we talk about obviously all this sort of stuff, it just makes it more usable. And in my opinion anyways, Polkadot is relatively fast. And one thing that Gavin Wood says, TPS doesn't really matter. It doesn't. It depends on usage. Can you, as a blockchain, handle the throughput? Can you handle the latency? Obviously, real-time degradation of a mainnet versus testnet is very, very different. And when we talk about other things coming, which I will go on to, it's going to change how the ecosystem works. And already we're talking about core time sales to increase barrier to entry, right? We're already talking about more efficient speeds where it's twice as fast. Stuff like that will matter when more people use this blockchain, which I think will probably happen very, very soon. So Polka Virtual Machine, it's unreleased and you may never have heard of it, but we're going to talk about it, right? So Polkadot, it's been essentially built on WebAssembly from the start, right? Bit of Rust in there as well. Now, as you can imagine, I'm not the most technically gifted, but I'm going to pinpoint the basics of this and then I'm going to put it all together for you. Now, the main thing with this is, right, when we talk about this is the bit I'm more interested in. It's free, it's open source, and anyone can use it without licensing fees. You may have heard of something called Ethereum. They do something very, very similar. Now, obviously, with the likes of Polkadot, with the element of the substrate, and obviously all the other part of it, this changes the game massively to enable people, developers, projects, whatever, to use Polka Virtual Machine, which is interesting. So these are some of the results performance-wise, right? You got native and you got Polka VM and you got all the other ones here. Solana, execution performance, pretty damn quick, right? Another one here is oh God, I can't even say, I'm not even going to say it. Here we go. It's by far one of the quickest ones out there, right? Now, it's capable of running arbitrary programs written in C, C++, and Rust, which in my opinion, probably the most common languages in cryptocurrency. So that alone is giving you an idea. Well, when you talk about core times, when you talk about Polka Virtual Machine, when we talk about how the infrastructure is going to work, are we going to start seeing a lot more added and built around Polkadot? Probably, yes. Now, the thing that has been released most noticeably is Jam, the Jam chain essentially. So Join Accumulate Machine is what it's called. Now, I am not going to pretend that I've read the millions of pages of the grey paper, right? It was released recently. Yeah, if you want to read it, feel free. But as I say, I am not very technically minded, and it doesn't really interest me in terms of understanding the be-all and end-all. I like the simplicity element, and I'm going to draftly go over to this page, which gives you an idea. So why is it needed? The relay chain boasts a significant processing power, and the limits around its support obviously is huge, right? So with obviously parachains and, you know, the barrier to entry and stuff like that, this makes it more efficient and runs more like a blockchain. And it also segregates elements of the Polkadot blockchain, such as staking and the governance, so it can be separate to run other things more efficiently, and it will increase the speed. So increased flexibility, that's huge. Developer friendly, that is also a must as well. It's absolutely huge, that element alone. Now, when we talk about obviously this is kind of the element here. Polkadot parachains, the smart contracts. Jam is going to be a combination of all of them, which is kind of very, very interesting to understand that. Now, when we talk about this, Jam aims to be a comprehensive, semi-coherent blockchain platform combining Ethereum smart contract functionality with Polkadot's parachain architecture for shared security while offering native ZK rollups. That's pretty big, right? Now, the parachain element is, and I think a lot of people forget this, that each individual parachain is its own blockchain in its own right, but it's sharing the security of Polkadot, which in my opinion is probably one of the best out there. Now, when we talk about this just makes it even better. It makes it just a better situation. Now, there will still be parachains. People will want to have a parachain, but the way that they'll be done will be different. As you know, there'll be no crowd loans. It'll be all done on the core time. Plug in your substrate, build your blockchain, build your thing that you want, buy the core time, get plugged in as a parathread. I think that's what they're going to be known as. Now, when we talk about this, obviously, transactionless environment, multi-core computation, right, which is pretty big in itself. Obviously, the smart contracts is relatively big in the ZK rollups and all the other stuff as well. But here, DOT remains crucial for core time purchases, but Jam might be significantly expand on how core time is utilized. The future of the tokenomics is yet to be determined. So the DOT token will still be used for core time. So if you think about it in the simple terms, right, smart contracts, you will still need to use obviously the DOT token and stuff like that to allow that functionality. Core time, more tokens will be required because you will need to buy them. That would obviously mean, well, if there's more core time sales, more projects wanting to use the architecture, yeah, it's going to be good for the token, right? Yet to be determined, though, in terms of tokenomics, but it's relatively bullish in my opinion. When we talk about performance targets, just to give you a little bit of an insight, this has obviously been put there because it's kind of like just, you know, forecasted. 350 Jam cores will support, you know, a 6-second execution time and a 5 megabyte input each. That's pretty good. So think of one core as one parachain for simplicity. That is 3 times the current parachain computation. That's quite big when you think about it as an update. Obviously, the throughput, obviously 850 megabytes. You know, this puts, you know, Jam very, very high compared to most blockchains. So it's basically comparing it and computing against and with Solana, which is relatively big. Now, obviously, the disappointing part is it probably won't be ready for about 2 years. Right. However, before all that, you're probably going to get core time. You are going to get obviously the bridges, the synchronized backend and other bits and pieces, which is going to run before this, right? Which is huge. However, when you look at this in terms of its future element, this could be absolutely massive for the long term of cryptocurrency in terms of a blockchain that will handle pretty much everything better than Ethereum and potentially better than Solana. I know Solana's got the hype, but technology wise, this probably could be the best chain for everything. So when you put it all together and you think about all the things I've said about core time, the developer friendly element, the freaking, obviously the Jam chain, you know, the back end side, right? You're probably going to start seeing more and more projects wanting to use Polkadot. And HydraDX here is a very, very simple DEX, which obviously integrates as well with Nova Wallet, which is very, very good. A lot of people think that the wallets on Polkadot are a bit shit, but they're not. Nova's amazing. You know, you can use Talisman and use this. It's brilliant. We're already starting to see some meme coins and a few little random coins coming out. But when you think about when most of that is available, there'll be a lot of people wanting to use Polkadot. Solana, is the rug chain. Ethereum gets hacked. You know, Polkadot might well be the next best thing realistically for people to put their projects on there. And hopefully, fingers crossed, they're better than the competition. But when you think about that and you think about more and more projects would equal more core time sales, which will equal more revenue burned and more use of the chain and that DOT token, which is much better than the previous model of crowd loans, which I think is pretty huge. So in terms of marketing, this is the one thing that obviously everyone gets really annoyed about with Polkadot, which makes sense. For me, personally, projects I think that do very, very well sometimes only do well in price but not in the developments and the technology side. We all know that Solana, Ethereum, and Polkadot, they're leading projects in terms of developments, which is huge, right? For obvious reasons. Now, Polkadot's kind of the one that's away from that in terms of price action and success due to time and projects and stuff. But there's a lot of building going on here. Marketing-wise, yeah, we've got a little bit of a marketing element here. Brand awareness of Polkadot is increasing. We've obviously just had the Indy 500. You know, Connor Daly did fantastically well in the Indy 500. He qualified well, he finished 10th, and he actually led some of the laps, which is really, really good. There's also other things happening as well, which I don't know if it's fully happening, but Inter Miami has been talked about for a potential sponsorship. Inter Miami is a very, very good football brand. The problem is brand awareness is interesting because I would personally, if anyone's listening to this in Polkadot, I would rather, if you're going to sponsor a team, try and utilize a token in somewhere. So if people buy a ticket, get a QR code, you can be able to open a Nova wallet and ultimately get some free DOT. Maybe that might be a good idea. Something like that instead of it just plastered on a shirt because, yeah, I'm in England. Premier League is full of sponsorships for crypto-related stuff. I'm a massive F1 fan as well. I like IndyCar too. But just putting a Polkadot logo on things doesn't really cut it. If it has fan engagement from ticket sales, from the revenue of like burger stands or whatever, and people can scan a QR code and get free DOT for every burger they buy or for whatever, that would be pretty good, right? Just thinking out loud. So the technicals. I know people are going to be like, well, it's doing crap. But for me, there's a reason why it's doing crap. Crowd loans, in my opinion, haven't worked. That whole model is getting put in the bin and there's a new one coming, which is much better, which will make it like Ethereum and obviously Solana, which is kind of huge, right? Solana isn't the greatest thing in the world. It really isn't. It works to an extent, but it can have its problems and it has had its problems. Polkadot's problems have just been because it's been too hard to use. That's it. Change that, you've got a good problem. It's solved, right? So when we look at the technicals, yes, when you look at this in terms of where it is, in my opinion, mega undervalued. Fix the problems. It's got the development. It's still running. It's got a really decent sized treasury as well. It might be absolutely fine, but obviously it depends on the team. They need to roll out these updates in an efficient, good time. Still the 30th of May. We are still in that 4-year cycle vein. And most importantly, I think we're at the start of the bull market. This is my technical analysis, what I've got. We've had an impulse. We've pulled back to the 618. If we're going to moon, that $17 level looks very, very, very juicy. But we could go much, much higher. This is a very, very solid asset. But when you start, talking about all these upgrades, it might well be very, very different in the next year or so, right? There will also be a lot of hype around it. There will be. It's Polkadot, right? It's already proven that it's one's probably here to stay. The difference is, as I say, it's just not developer friendly. Or, well, not even developer friendly. It's not even human friendly at the time, sometimes. It's just the way it is. In terms of the BTC pair, it's looking, in my opinion, right at the floor. And for me, I think it may well have, showing a signs of a potential bottom down here. It could obviously go lower, but I would still rather buy this than buy something that has already ran. If you want to make money, you got to take risks and you got to find where the good money is. Most people, as I say, will buy something that's already popped and there's not much returns. These type of assets that are developing, they've got genuine things coming and there's no sign of it letting up, is the things that you want to look for that's undervalued. If this market runs for another year or even 2 years, because, I don't think the left translator cycle's here, we could well see Polkadot do very, very well. It peaked out, obviously, in November 2021. what's to say the next year couldn't be bullish for this? I think it could be. You've just got to be so mindful of your entry. And this entry right now, belows. So there's an update on Polkadot. I know I'm not very fluid in the technical jargon, but there's a lot of positive things here. It's low valued in BTC terms and obviously in USD. There's a lot of developments coming. You've just got to be a bit patient, unfortunately. And yeah, I know that isn't suited for anyone or most people in crypto these days, but you may well be rewarded in this one.